Somebody want to holler out there, folks, if they want to come in?
Okay. You can come in if you want.
Otherwise, close the door.
Well, we'll try to. Come on in. Chairs up here, guys. Come on up here.
Morning.
At some point, pass around the sign-in sheet. We need to have you sign in. Okay, this is the time set for Sapphire Worm Study Area current recommendation letter to Congress from the County Commission. A decision and a discussion.
If I could do yoga, I'd get on the floor.
Okay, so we're gonna have order. Here's what's gonna happen. The commission is going to discuss whether or not they're going to leave the current letter in the current form, or modify the letter, or change the letter. That's the first bit of discussion. We also later on are going to discuss the Wilderness Study Area Advisory Committee that we appointed at the last meeting. We are not going to re-adjudicate this and everybody's testimony. That's not what's going to happen. The commission's going to have their discussion. They may or may not be a motion, and I will let the public comment on the motion. On the motion. Nothing else. Clear? All right. So with that, commissioners, we have a letter, and certainly if the public needs a copy of that, we can supply it. It's in your packet. And this is the letter that was sent to Congress based on the meeting that we had with most of you, some familiar faces. Personally, I want to thank you for how knowledgeable you were in educating the commission on this whole matter. This is a big issue, and we're going to, hopefully we can eat this elephant one little chunk at a time. As you recall the letter, I'll just give you a quick synopsis that instead of saying signing off on Danes's bill, what we did is we wanted a more balanced approach in resolving the study area because there were lots of questions that we had. And we agreed that it's probably time to deal with this study. It's been going on for 40 years, and basically what it allows is the Forest Service to decide whatever they want to are the rules in the study area. We had testimony, I think it was Mr. Antonelli talked about initially, things didn't change. And then as different bureaucrats got here with the Forest Service, they kind of locked us out. So in that sense, I think the commission has been, at least in discussions, agreeing that, it's time to change it. But there's so many other things to consider. And, looking at the map, what portions of that do we feel, since we live here and use it more than anybody else in America, what do we feel that should look like? Another big decision is, the land use, and then how do we affect the Forest Service's management plan. So with that discussion, between commissioners.
Well, I'm sure, I know there's areas in this, I believe that's 94,000 acres in the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area. And that north half, the north end of this study area is, as far as I'm concerned, should be wilderness because it's all rock, vertical, and the south end is, there has been used in the past as access and people would recreate in it. I don't see any reason why that can't be released from the study area. Scott?
Yes, my personal opinion on this, I've been going through and just all the comments and stuff. And what really frustrates me is that they want to shut off more when they can't take care of what they're already done. That really frustrates me bad. And I don't understand, it's just, even with the maps, none of us really know how to lay it. I mean, you can draw a circle around anything you want on the map. And we haven't really got to see exactly what they want to do on that, as far as I'm concerned. But the way I am, and then it's, once a guy lets that sit there, and then the Forest Service comes in, and they do their typical stuff, they just stop everything. And it's no good for either side. It's no good for the people that want it as wilderness, because I mean, it don't matter even if it's rock. It still needs to be managed. And that's my personal opinion. You gotta take care of what you got. As far as I'm concerned, they don't take care of what they got right now. That's the way I see it.
So, what I've learned, and I'm sure got a lot more to learn, but from you all, is that there isn't much confidence in the Forest Service at all. On the other hand, I think it's, Senator Gaines basically is pushing this to take a decision to move on. I don't think he's against portions of, and we're talking about the Sapphire, I should say.
Aren't there fire regulations?
I don't think he's
Like how
against
many
it all,
people
some
and the
portions
number
that,
of
you know,
the road?
becoming wilderness. Once and for all, there it is, done. And so I learned that, and I also learned that there's some excellent letters that we got on both sides. I want to acknowledge your letters. As of the last meeting, there were 22 letters to release the wilderness and 5 not to, but that's changed. Now we've got more letters in, we just haven't got it closed. But even in the letters that said release it, they wanted Granite County citizens to be involved in the discussion on the planning part, where that's really where rubber meets the road. Where the, you know, what is that plan going to look like? What are the limitations, things like that. So, first of all, I want to thank you all for, you know, all the information you gave us. And this is just my feeling. I don't think we have to necessarily fight about this. I think there's so much agreement. I think we can pull this together where we can make it where everybody gets what they want and the land is managed properly. And the reason I say that is because even in the letters for delisting, there are a lot of things that say, yeah, we want to have a say about the management of the forest, almost every one. So today, we're just here to decide whether we leave our letter lay, and there is in Congress next week, or actually this week on Wednesday, a hearing. It's not a vote, it's just a hearing. I think the senator would have liked us to say, you know, release it. That's not what we said. We said, you know what, this needs a lot more discussion. So what we did, as you recall, is we have asked for people to sign up for an advisory committee. Remember that? And we're taking applications for that advisory committee now. And the commission will decide who sits on that committee. So we'll take that up here in a minute. That's another issue on the agenda. So for right now, is there a motion as to whether or not we should modify the letter or leave it the way it is?
Well, at this time, I just assume leave the letter the way it is and move ahead with our advisory committee. Scott? I second it.
There's a motion and a second to just leave the letter it is and move ahead with the advisory committee, which we'll discuss in a minute.
Because on the advisory committee, this won't just stop because of this wilderness. It'll still, we need to participate in the forest coalition, and we gotta start standing up for ourselves. And the wilderness thing has brought it to our attention more and more, but I think that by now that everybody, both sides, for and against, is just feeling the same thing. We need to have an input. We have to. If we don't, it's just gonna keep getting like this. You know, and that's what I got to say on it.
So there's a motion and a second, and normally I ask for discussion on the motion, but what I'd like to have now is comment on the motion, and I'll just go around the room. We're not gonna, you know, if you're gonna want to reduplicate this thing, I'm gonna stop you, okay? I wanna hear how you feel about the motion. Does everybody understand the motion?
Would you repeat it, please? I
Sure.
don't have a copy of that.
Sure. Would you repeat your motion, Mark?
Can you read it for us?
You got it down, Mike?
The letter,
Letter.
Why don't you provide a copy of the letter and the motion?
Or
for-
provide us
for
a
the
copy.
You have the motion written down?
Yeah.
You wanna read that motion?
Commissioner Bonnie moved to leave the letter as written and Commissioner Adams.
By the way, the letter is not online.
Now, do you want somebody to read the letter quickly?
Yes, please.
Can we have a copy of the
Yeah,
letter?
you will.
Well,
He's
why
gonna
can't
read
we
the
have
motion.
a copy now so we know what you're talking
He's
about?
gonna read he's gonna read the letter right now.
I emailed it to you yesterday, Dick.
Hmm?
I
You got
emailed
it,
it to you
Dick.
yesterday.
Well,
Go ahead.
there's a lot of
I've
people
got-
there
yeah.
that weren't on the
I just wanna
email.
make sure they do
I don't
that.
think they know what's in the.
He's gonna read it, they'll know.
It's dated December 19th from the Board of County Commissioners of Granite County to U.S. Senator Steve James, Washington, D.C., regarding objection to the repeal of the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area. Dear Senator James, over 20 people were in our office today to enthusiastically object to the repeal of the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area, and they all requested more time for public comment at your office prior to a decision being made. A member of your staff, Spencer Merwin, and Stan Spencer had made an appointment on our agenda to request a letter of support for the repeal of the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area. After receiving the public comment and in many emails and telephone messages, this board unanimously declined to write such a letter. We feel that the characteristics of the Sapphire WSA are significantly different than any other WSA due to nearly 24 lakes that feed blue ribbon trout streams, as well as secure habitat for big game and other wildlife. According to the diverse group of stakeholders we heard from today, they are willing to work through public participation for a more balanced approach to resolving Montana's wilderness study area. While we agree that it is time to decide on how these areas should be managed in the long term, we believe that the public is interested in a fair, transparent, inclusive, and fact-based solution that recognizes the history of collaborative dialogue. While many proposed solutions have come before Congress over the years, the many people here today expressed a sincere desire to have a voice and to truly participate in this decision. We feel that a fair and balanced compromise can be reached if all voices are heard. A one-size-fits-all approach is not the solution to the WSAs in Montana, and most certainly is not the solution to the unique landscape of the Sapphire WSA. This board voted unanimously to request that you obtain more public discussion on WSAs in general, and specifically on the Sapphire WSA. Granite County would be willing to host at your convenience a forum for you to receive public comment and discussion on this topic that is so vitally important to the citizens of Granite County and to all Montanans. Sincerely yours, Board of County Commissioners of Granite County, Barton C. Bonney, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so the only other thing I would add before we start public comment is that I talked to the Senator's office yesterday in their hearing in Congress today, just a hearing, we're gonna have a vote. Senator Daines is willing to treat Sapphire WSA separately. I don't know what that means necessarily, but that's what I was told. So, I would take it apart from the other WSAs that he's considering delisting. So with that, be kind, be gentle, be quick, and he started right there.
Open this up.
Okay? Is that it?
That's all I got to say.
I agree
Give your name, please, and,
Todd Boxletter.
okay, thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Chuck. I'm in favor of opening it and releasing it. It's been tied up for long enough.
Neil, it's time to do something. Open it up, keep it open.
So release it, Neil? Okay.
Nate Marletto. I'm also a local business owner. I own Granite Sportland. I've employed 4 people for the last 12 years. Our business revolves around whether this is open or closed. We're losing more and more places to use our snowmobiles, ATVs, etc. I live down in the Sapphire. Me and my family use that ground all winter long. I see no need to have more wilderness area, so that's my take on it.
Dennis Linneman from Lowell, Montana. I rec right here. I think in the present condition, it cannot be managed. By releasing it, then it can be managed. It can be part of the forest plan. Then that's when the public can comment and get involved when the forest plan is involved. But right now, the opponents act like there's logging equipment waiting at the boundary ready to take over. That's not the case, because once it goes in forest plan, then it can be managed and the public can be involved. In the present condition, it cannot be managed.
Thanks, Tim.
Gary Donahue, I think it should be open. So it can be managed, open, not a wilderness.
Thank you, Gary.
You gotta wait your turn.
Hang on.
Wait your turn.
Okay.
For the record, the commissioners declined to provide the public with a copy of the letter and the copy of the resolution. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Dick.
Jack Roach, I am in favor of opening it up.
That's it. Thanks, Jack.
Pat Connors. I too am in favor of opening up. 40 years, we've studied it to death, and nothing's happened to it, and it's languished. So the public didn't have access to it, and I mean general public. So it's time. They had their chance, and they let it languish. So it's time to open up and start anew.
Thank you.
Stan Spencer. I think the motion really straddles the fence. I think it's important to take a position. You spoke about down the road, and I think you're right on track. I'd like to see the county commissioners chair some form of a bipartisan approach to redesignation, but you got to repeal before you can do that. What concerns me by straddling the fence right now is if the Sapphire gets treated separately, basically what he's saying is that the Forest Service is going to continue to manage it as is. And I think by supporting him opens up the door where the county commissioners can become an active participant and an unbiased participant, which I would certainly endorse. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. I think the smaller committee, okay, their task, as I recall, our task to them, and they haven't picked yet, but to even have it, was to meet and come up with a recommendation to either support release or not.
Right.
Based on, but not right now.
But I guess,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I guess I think we're at that fish or cut bait. If we don't support, I think he has to take, or I say we, if the county commissioners don't support, I believe he has to pull that from the bill. That would be my concern.
Okay.
That's the way I understood it.
He was going to pull it separate and deal with it separately.
Well, yeah, by dealing it just basically means dropping it, and it will
I
just.
didn't get that impression. But
I'm pretty sure that's what has to happen.
okay, thank you. Anybody else? Let's start here. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree exactly with what he said. I think it ought to be either yes for the bill as it is or a no for the bill, because exactly what he says is going to happen. If you take it out, it'll continue to be a wilderness study area and nothing will happen for another 40 years. I support taking it out.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. They're not voting on the bill right now. Don't we still have time?
I don't know. That's the question.
Well, I asked that question, and initially I was told, okay, you're right, we're not voting yet. It's a discussion. But
if you can find out when they're going to actually vote on the bill, and we have our input before that.
So that's a $64 question.
Then I would agree that letter's okay. Otherwise, I think you ought to say yes or no.
Yes. So I want to know how much time do we have, right?
Right. How much time before Congress is actually going to do something with it?
Okay.
And of course, they don't know either.
Maybe there's somebody here who knows. So, sir. Yes.
I'm for opening it up. Tom Mickey,
Tom?
I'm for opening up the area.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Elena?
Elena Gagliano from Philipsburg. First of all, I think you should revise the letter saying that you support Senator Daines' Bill 2206. It will be heard tomorrow at a hearing. It will be televised. And it's just being introduced for the hearing. Like everything the federal government does, it will take another 30 years for it to happen. So I think you should revise the letter. I support it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Who's next? Sir.
Grant Ellison. I support it for being open. As a lot of us here grew up around here, as we get older, you shut it off into wilderness. Most of us can't walk in a lot of those places, you know, as we get older. And most of us here, we watch what we're doing up there. We don't make a mess.
I represent that regard, but you're next. Hi, come up, please, wait.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Patty
Patty.
Candid,
Please stand up.
and I am for opening it up.
Okay, thanks, Patty. State your name, who's next? Bill?
I'm Bill Atnoli. Sorry to revisit this, but, and I really appreciate you've gotten a lot of comments from people so far, probably on this end of the room, open it up. That is not what Daines' bill does. Daines' bill doesn't open anything up, okay? Daines' bill just removes that label, and it's still up to the commission that you appoint and people from our county and people from anywhere in the United States to have their input with the Forest Service to change the plan. There's a fairly impassioned letter in the Montana Standard this morning from a gal, and she's with the wilderness side of things. And she says if Daines' bill passes, it opens it up, and it opens it up for mining. And it doesn't open it up for mining. Actually, the whole wilderness study area is open for location of mining claims right now. Okay? Nothing changes as far as mining goes. Nothing changes as far as motorized recreation goes. So if you feel that you would like to see, as Bart said, rather wisely, I think, maybe some of it should be opened back up the way that it was always managed until a few years ago. And maybe some of it should be considered for wilderness. I think to get off the dime here, you guys, as Stan said, you guys have to be a little more proactive here. All you're asking Daines to do is remove that label. And with the label on there, nothing has happened over the last 40 years. The Montana Wilderness Association has gotten most of what they want because the Forest Service, I think they use that label to lock the thing up. But theoretically, it should be being managed now however it was being used in '77. To summarize then, I think at a bare minimum you should rewrite your letter, and I think you should be more supportive of Daines' idea to try to get things moving here a little bit. His bill won't open a thing up, not 1 square foot, but maybe it will get people to think a little more about cooperating and collaborating and getting a good plan for our wilderness study area.
Thank you, Bill. Who's next?
My name's Dan Kahn. I'm a taxpayer in Granite County. I agree with Mr. Antoli. I think the commissioners should redraft a letter supporting Daines' bill. I think that as people have said, if this just kind of gets passed on, we might be sitting in the same spot for the next 40 years. So I strongly urge you to redraft a letter in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm Denise Leiser. We live up at Georgetown. We have kids in the high school. I am in favor of you redrafting the letter to completely support removing that wilderness study label off of that, because we're going to be dealing with the Forest Service. Whoever's local here, and whatever their regulations are going to be determining how it's managed. And I don't know if we have any more input, but I think, as he talked about, straddling the fence just opens us up for, you know, keeping on with the keeping on. I think you need to take a strong stand and say, we support removing that label.
Thank you.
The time to do that is when the next forest plan is made. Get in there and holler. That's, you know, well, that's the way they do it. The Forest Service every so often has to remake a plan, has to remake the forest plan. About every 10 years they have to do it.
Okay.
And that's the time to get your input in. And if you've got the committee going and they've got some recommendations, that they can work with the Forest Service and get that done.
Okay, so we're gonna sort of keep a little order here. Who's next? Thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name is Heidi Hinkle, and I'm also in support of you changing your letter in support of taking off that label that Bill told us about. And I feel that if we don't show support, then what's the use of even having a discussion? If we show support, then we have input, like you said, of Granite County, to say how we want to want that land managed. You know, like you said, maybe some of it should be a portion of wilderness, maybe some of it shouldn't. But if we don't show our support, then what's the use? Then it stays like it does, and there's no chance of giving our input to that. And I do feel that we need to better manage our forests. Over the last many years, we've seen a decline in so many different areas, and definitely need to get our voice, you know, out there.
Thank you.
Chuck Enkel, I agree with my wife.
Smart.
Support the bill.
Thank you, Chuck. Who's next?
Nathan.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Nathan Smith. I also support Senator Dane's bill to change the designation away from the wilderness study area. And I think also in redrafting the bill, I think it would be really smart while we have a voice to maybe say what we do want, which I think a lot of us are in agreement that we'd like to see motorized use being allowed as a primary concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Sue?
So I'm Sue Peterson, and I'm a rancher from Drummond, and I support your letter and forming an advisory committee. I mean, I think this is democracy in action. I think it's a big issue, bigger than Granite County. I think it was a courageous stand to create this advisory committee, and I would like to take it one step further and have a committee like they have in the Beaverhead and River Valley, where all the interests are together, the four-wheelers, the horseback riders, hikers, logging, mining, ranchers, and then we can head off these emotional meetings and just do everything rationally. And I do believe in collaboration, and I've enjoyed the outdoors all my life, and I'm thinking about the next generations. I want them to be able to enjoy what I had, to be able to go on a horsepacking trip and the solitude. I also think the motorized vehicles, I believe they have access to 95% of public grounds. Do you know if that's right, Chris?
It's pretty close.
Pretty close, maybe 96. So that's my piece. And I'm also authorized to speak for the Backcountry Horsemen of Missoula, and they are in favor of your motion. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Who's next?
Rodney Hobart. My opinion of your motion is that it's too wish-washy. You need to be more clear about where it's going, where you're going, and need to get some definition in it. As far as more committees, I think it's probably been committeeized for 40 years.
Thank you. Who's next? Way in the back.
Excuse me, Pat Hafner from Frenchtown. I want to urge you to change your letter to your support of the bill, because it will force the issue to do something with these WAs. If we don't, nothing's going to happen with them. It's going to languish for the next 40 years like they have. So that's what I wish you to do.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks.
Who's next? Sir?
Don Ruana, and I'm in favor of opening up, getting things back open.
Hey, Don, thank you. Anybody else? Going once? Yes.
Chris Marchand, I'd support your letter as it was originally written and support the concept of this advisory group. I think you might be in a better bargaining position to be separated out and keep it from being released from the WSA until you come up with your recommendation. I think it might give it, you might have more leverage by doing it that way, but whatever. But the concept of having an advisory that you brought on the table, I think that's a very constructive way to go.
So Chris, Chris is pretty knowledgeable about this, and I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
How much time do we have?
I don't know.
I mean, I think it's important, I mean, I think the commission wants to be effective about what's going on, because it's gonna happen with or without us, right? They're gonna meet, right? You have any idea how much time we have?
I think, well, it's so difficult because we introduce legislation and get it passed. And just, I think Senator Daines wants to get it passed before the election in the fall. So I would think that they probably, you're probably looking at July or August before anything. But that's optimistic. It's very likely that it could take 2 or 3 years to pass out. But you have a 2 or 3 month window here to form an advisory group and make some, to do some constructive things. Now, it depends on how deep that advisory group needs to get into the weeds, whether you can get it done in that time frame. But
Well, the advisory, correct me if I'm wrong here, was to affect the Forest Service planning process.
It wasn't about the wilderness
Not
study
about,
area.
not about delisting, it was about affecting the Forest Service planning process. So we're ready, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just we're all talking on the same sheet of music here. Who's next? Sir?
Commissioner Sawyer, thank you. My understanding is that committee was not designed for the forest plan revision process, but for looking at this wilderness study area. That was very clear from the last half dozen meetings that have been going on in this room here. And I don't think that's news to me to hear that would be for something other than addressing the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area, the advisory committee that this body has suggested would form. It's good to see you all again. I've seen many of you several times in the last several months now. And I want to reiterate what Chris said, that the meeting tomorrow, there is no vote taking place tomorrow. So this group does have time. The committee should have some time. Again, I don't think I mentioned my name. I'm Zach Porter with the Montana Wilderness Association. We represent about 800 people between Ravalli County and Granite County, members and supporters who care deeply about the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area, many of whom have turned out at recent meetings. The reason all these people are in this room today is because Senator Daines is working behind the scenes to put pressure on this commission. He has personally, as clearly called this commission multiple times to try to change the course that this commission decided was the right course in December.
No,
you drafted a letter in December.
Zach, that's not true.
That's enough.
Come on,
I'm here to
stick to the facts. The motion is what you're talking about.
Well, I'm here to
We're not
encourage
going
you
to read you, so tell me how you feel about the motion and why.
Here to encourage you to stick with the motion as it was written, with the letter as it was written in December. The genie will be out of the bottle if this wilderness study area is eliminated. There's no reason Senator Daines would put this energy into this legislation if it didn't change what happens on the ground. To be really clear about something, the situation in the Sapphire Wilderness Study Area will change overnight when this bill passes. It will be open to many uses that are not currently permitted there today, because the reason it's managed as it is today is the Montana Wilderness Study Act of 1977. So
I think you're going
there will be
Okay, so we're not going to read
change to the
it.
management.
So your advice is to leave the letter the way it is. Is that right, Zach?
That's correct.
Okay, so here's the thing I want to clear up. I have not received any pressure from Daines' office. And I've talked to the senator. In fact, today it was, hey, if you guys decide to leave the letter is the way it is, we're going to just probably deal with it separately. So, fine. That's not pressure. Come on. So let's be accurate here. Next, who's next?
One point to bring up is probably with the next agenda, we need to clarify the advisory committee.
Yeah.
Because my understanding was it was just going to be on this bill. So we
Well,
need to clarify that.
Okay, here's what happens. you guys educated us at the last meeting that the place to affect management was at the Forest Service plan.
Exactly.
Okay, I mean, that's when I appointed
Don't go by
the
that.
advisory council, not before. That's when, after I had the information that I gathered, and it seemed to be a consensus that if you really want to affect forest management, that's the place to do it. So that's why I appointed and Commissioner Adler agreed to head an advisory committee. So let's be clear, we'll talk about that again. Right now, we're just talking about the letter, sir.
Yes, I think you should change your letter to support Dane's bill. They've had 40 years to discuss everything they're bringing up again, so just support it. It hasn't done anything the last 40 years, so let's cut it, start new, and go forward.
And your name, sir?
Dan Sorum.
Thanks, Dan.
If you don't mind, Bill, I've got the ad in the Philipsburg Maine paper that advertises for the committee. Do you mind if I read it?
Sure.
The committee will make a recommendation to the Granite County Commission and our senators and House representative in Congress on the Sapphire Wilderness Study area and whether or not this land should be released from the study.
That's not the way I remember it.
And the name of the committee was for the Granite County Wilderness Study Advisory Committee.
You guys can expand that.
We're gonna talk about that later though, the next deal, so Commissioner Adler? Did you want to? I'm sorry.
I couldn't hear it in the reading.
Oh, do you want me to bring it up here?
Sir?
I'm just here to support the bill and change the letter for it to support.
Your name, sir?
Dan Nash.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else?
Bill?
Yeah. Bill?
If Sue doubled up, can I double up?
Yeah.
Briefly.
We're pretty.
Briefly, Chris Marchand said something very interesting at one of the previous meetings, which was, there was quite a bit of talk about the timber base. And he said, and accurately, none of the timber base is in the wilderness study area. Okay? In the 70s, when we had sawmills and we had kids in school here, quite a bit of logging went on in Rock Creek. And what happened, without going into a lot of detail, we ended up with the Rock Creek logging moratorium. Okay? And half of the timber base in Granite County was eliminated when they decided no more logging in Rock Creek. When you have a deal like the Rock Creek moratorium, which was connected with a wild and scenic designation, which is similar to what has gone on with the wilderness study area designation, you take this timber out of the timber base, loggers have to move on, schools contract, and it's bad for the economy of the county. I think you guys should keep your eye on the ball here, which is what's best for our county, I think, is to get this resolved. And what's been going on for 40 years has not resolved it. You guys have a chance to help push this resolution forward. And I think the best way for you to do that is to change your letter.
Right.
I want to get to everybody else. Is there anybody that hasn't spoken?
This guy here.
I agree with Bill back there.
What's your name?
My name's Don Prinky, and having worked for the agency for lots of years, you can just see it coming. I mean, this was supposed to be a multiple use type thing, when it all started, where everybody got to use the land, and they actually did the work on the trails. Now, everybody remembers old George McLean going out and clearing all these trails on mules and every dang thing else, And you kind of miss those old days, I mean, now the Forest Service has taken the attitude that, boy, let Little Wilderness Society take over all of this, we don't have to do nothing, So I'm all in support of what he said, getting that letter redone. We've been hassling this out for 40 years, and it's time that we, get some clarity on this issue and get it done with it.
And the time you get the timber base increases in the next 4 years.
Okay, you're not talking to them, you're talking to me.
All right.
Okay?
That's the
And
time
I'm
to
gonna
do
tell
it.
you, let's stop. Who hasn't spoken?
Tom.
Who's Tom?
It seems like the task at hand right now is to support Senator Daines and get this out of the wilderness study area. With respect to the group that you're talking about putting together, maybe that group in its spirit should be lobbying the Forest Service in the next chapter. But it seems like the task at hand is right now, a yes or no supporting the bill.
Yeah.
I would support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody, sir?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, Chuck Leiser, I'm a resident of Granite County, I live up in Georgetown, and I support Senator Daines' bill, and I think we do need to get this ball rolling.
Thank you, sir.
I don't usually talk, my wife talks.
She did good. Anybody else? That hasn't time, sir?
I'm Dave Stone, with the Vice President of the Anaconda Sportsman's Club, and I just want to go on record that we are always for access in our club, to the point where it doesn't hurt the wildlife though.
So how do you feel about the current motion?
I think maybe the letter needs to be rewritten to include some of that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'd just like to, I guess maybe regurgitate this a little bit. Bill raised the valid point. The bill just removes the designation. Beyond that, really, nothing will change. But I would urge the commissioners to support the bill. Here's what, if you don't support the bill, I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this, that it'll get dropped from this, from the Sapphire will get dropped from the bill. So then we're going to be exactly where we are today, just looking at a Forest Service, I should say managed, but maybe mismanaged. But what I think is important is if the commissioners support it, here's the next step. We have a hearing tomorrow, and then it goes to Senate markup, and I'm told that'll probably be in March. It probably could move fairly quickly. The commissioners can withdraw their support in between the hearing and the markup if the committee in the middle of this decides to go another direction. So there's definitely an option. It's not like you're half pregnant. You can back out of it. So I would urge you to support it based on you do have options.
Thank you for that clarification. Anybody else? Anybody else want to speak? Go ahead. Scott.
What I'm hearing then is, so we need to change the letter different, so the first motion we have, we don't want to use that one. We want to go to a motion on re-advising the letter and saying what you guys are saying instead of what they said, right? Is that what
Correct.
Is that what I'm hearing,
Correct.
everybody?
You're right.
Yes.
Okay, so anybody else needs to speak, because the commission is going to take action on the first motion, unless...
One more, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I mean, that's great that you allow people to come in and at least give their opinions of what, how passionate we are about this area and this study. And
I've learned a bunch, so...
And I think the smart thing for you guys to realize is, this is Granite County. You need to do what's best for Granite County.
Exactly. We're not trying to solve everybody. That's a good point. We never want to give the impression we're trying to put our feelings on the rest of the even state. It's certainly Granite County. Sir, one more time.
Commissioner Slaughter, the letter that was written in mid-December is the cautious approach here. Senator Daines has given you no written assurance that this area will be treated differently if this moves forward as it is in Senator Daines' legislation today. I've been on the phone with Region 1 of the Forest Service just this week to ask them, what will happen when Senator Daines' bill passes? The answer is that lots will change when this bill passes. Again, that is why the amount of capital is being put into getting this bill through. If nothing was going to change, we wouldn't all be sitting in this room here. So
Because if you were sitting in this room.
If you want to maintain the values, the qualities that are present in the Sapphire Wilderness Study area today, for us all to have a conversation about, removing what keeps the sapphires as they are is going to, completely change the status quo. So my encouragement to you is play it conservative. Stand by the letter that you wrote in December. Take it slow. There's no rush here. Most bills, public land legislation, take minimum of 8 years to get passed by Congress. So the chance that this is going to get done this session of Congress is very slim.
So what are you worried about?
We can take our time with this committee, come to a solution that everybody in this room agrees on, and actually move forward much stronger, have the support of the whole congressional delegation instead of just one member of the congressional delegation. And this county will be that much better off having taken that time to find that sweet spot. So that would be my encouragement, stand by the letter as we wrote it.
Thank you, Dan.
My comment on that.
I just have one more quick point. I enjoy the backcountry probably as much as anyone. I've spent a lot of time packing into the Pentlers, not a lot of time, but sometimes. Spent my honeymoon in there, actually. I also, if we didn't have 158,000 acres of wilderness in our backyard already, I think this would be a bigger concern. But I feel that we actually do have 158,000 acres in the Anaconda-Pentler Wilderness already set aside, and I think it accomplishes passing that on to our next generation. Prestige wilderness area.
Thanks, sir. Okay, so I think we already see. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Right now, thank you, and once again, I've learned a lot. We're gonna limit the comments done, and so bring it back to the commission. So, Commissioner Adler, Commissioner Bonney, is there further discussion on the motion that's on the floor?
I think there should be that we redo the letter. Let's get rid of the first motion. We have.
We can do that. So you're looking to change?
My opinion is, I think we've waited long enough. I think if we keep waiting, this is just gonna get ran over us, and none of us are.
Another 40 years, you bet.
Okay, so this is the three of us, now you get to listen.
I think I'd make a motion.
Hang on, I got a motion on the floor I have to deal with first, and then you can. Okay? So we're still discussion on the first motion. I'm thinking if we change the letter, I'd like to use some different terminology. The wilderness folks, you learn from them, and here's what I worry about. I want to know that nothing changes, that it's until we can get with the Forest Service. I want to know that. And so I think we can ask that in our letter, that, give us some kind of guarantee that nothing changes. Okay? Secondly, this whole thing about removing it from the WSA, how about remove the label? Because it connotates that nothing changes except for the label, and I like that, Bill, and others that have spoke to that. Okay, we just want you to remove the label for right now, so that it does open up, so there is a planning opportunity, which goes to our next thing on the agenda here that we're going to talk about, and that's our group that gets to meet and then affect what the Forest Service plan is. So that's my comments. Commissioner Bynum?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we ought to revise the letter to be very specific with what we want in our decision.
So Bill, I would call for the vote on that first motion.
I'm going to call for the vote on the first. There's a motion on the floor to leave the letter the way it is, and basically to leave the letter. You want to read the motion quick, Mike? I'm sorry. The motion's on the floor. I don't want to mistake it.
Commissioner Bonney will leave the letter as written. Commissioner Adler, second.
Okay, so, I want to take a vote on Commissioner Bonney's motion. All in favor of the vote, say aye. Opposed, no. No? No. The motions died unanimously. So, I would entertain a new motion.
I'll make a motion on that we re-advise the letter the way that we want the public, is what we've gotten from you guys, and we're probably gonna have to talk to them more about this and move on with this right away.
We're gonna, yeah, we're gonna have to articulate the motion. So, it'd be a motion, and I'm just putting words in your mouth there, Scott. This is
You
your
do
mouth,
all the
right?
time.
So it's to, your motion would be to support Senator Daines' WSA, and maybe put some language in there to remove the label rather than to, the label of the WSA rather than to, how does he state it, to recall it or?
Repeal and
Repeal,
replace.
But that would, then, I mean, if you're in favor of his bill, then
We
you
are.
feel of it,
Yeah.
the WSA being taken off.
Right,
So, I
that's it,
think that might
simple.
confuse you if you say that. You might want to just say you're in favor of his bill.
Yeah, I want to be clear. So, Commissioner Bonnie?
Yes, and I think we, in that letter too, want to share that we have an advisory committee that we're gonna be looking at and working with the Forest Service to.
And we'll take that up in a minute, but we could put it in his letter.
That's correct,
Okay.
in the letter.
Now, let's make a distinction here, because there was some discussion about that. The advisory committee is to affect the planning, the Forest Service planning committee, right?
That's correct.
On how we want to affect it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, you want that in this letter?
I think we ought to share it.
Okay.
So, my understanding was a little different than you guys. The advisory committee was regarding the bill. So, and that's what the motion, and I believe this, and the ad said. So I think, if you could, I would take that on as a different.
But you gotta remember, I wasn't here when you
Okay,
did this,
all right.
and I was the one who appointed the advisory committee, and it was done in a meeting that you weren't present at. The next meeting, I was gone, and the county attorney advised the commission that they probably ought to take applications. I was willing to take it from the people in the room who wanted to do it. But the original motion, and the people here in the room will back me up, was that advisory committee was put together to advise the Forest Service, as Kerry White told us we had to, state gave us the ability to do, and appoint people to sit on that board and make sure the Forest Service hears from this community. That's what I appointed.
And I don't
That's what I appointed.
I don't disagree with you. I just say, let's do a new motion then, to clarify it. That's all I'm saying.
And we'll do that, I think, in the next.
Yeah, the next.
Okay, so let's restate the motion here. You wanna help me, Mr. County Attorney, Scott's motion?
I think, I'm interpreting his motion as that it's to write a letter supporting Senator Daines' bill.
Right, period.
Yes.
Commissioner Bonnie?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Is there a discussion on this new motion?
No. There's not. No, there's not. There's gonna be discussion, but it's gonna be with the commission. Do you have a second?
I have a second.
There's a motion and a second to revise our letter to support Senator Daines' removal of WSA Sapphire. And we're talking about Sapphire, just Sapphire, right? Scott?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a discussion between the commissions?
No? I don't have one.
Move on.
Well, the only thing I would ask is this the proper place to put in, give us some assurances that nothing happens
No,
in the management of this until we can get to the force. Do we want to say as a commission we're concerned about that?
Well, I think Bart already said that.
I did.
I think it's a given, but you could give your concern.
So we'll put that on.
Massage that letter.
And put it in the letter, and we'll make it public. Okay. All in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask every one of you for two things. One, participate if you can, and make sure that you get your feelings heard on the advisory board, which we're gonna talk about in a minute. Two, don't let us meet with the Forest Service alone. That's pretty lonely, okay? Okay.
And they don't speak English very well.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so It's past time, but we're gonna take it up right now. The second, consideration of Wilderness Study Advisory Committee discussion and I'm, by the way, I apologize to the attorney, I mean, he wasn't there, I was, you were. The appointment of the advisory commission was after we found out we could honestly affect Forest Service management, within the management point. That's why Kerry White was there.
So his whole speech told you
He
about.
was telling us, hey, I got a
You couldn't
bill,
affect the
you've
Forest
got a law,
Service.
you can affect that. That's why I appointed the advisory committee. So now we're talking about that.
But isn't that an issue though that comes after this bill is passed in Congress?
No.
You're talking about,
Well,
you're talking about,
We wanna
so,
keep it going.
so that's what my thought was.
We wanna
You
be
have the
ready for
advisory
that.
committee, okay,
Yeah.
so it could be both then. I mean, the advisory committee could be on ongoing legislation as well as the management.
could.
I think that's what, the way I got it from the people that actually want to be on it, was to keep up and put pressure on them to do stuff. Is that what I understand, and
Yes.
that's why we want to
That's
do
the way
this
I
committee?
understood it.
Well, and I would hope that what I'm thinking Scott just said was to make sure we get some assurances, because Danes' people and Danes himself told me nothing's going to change, contrary to what you heard from the wilderness people. But what I did hear from the wilderness people, what you got in writing, I got nothing. I don't have anything. But I want something. Give me an assurance, you know? So we'll ask for that, okay? But we need your participation to put to put your thoughts together so we can actually affect the planning, Forest Service planning group.
Has anybody ever seen what that study plan? I know they studied it for 5 years. What did they say was wilderness and what was not?
We'll get it for you. There's some that they recommended for wilderness and some they did not.
And you know, I would just about bet anybody in here would be more than willing to say it. They said it was wilderness then, let it be wilderness now. But what was open then should be open.
Okay, before we open this all up again, I think the commission's got some work to do here. I don't have a motion. Is there a motion to continue the Wilderness Study Advisory Committee for Granite County?
I'll make a motion that we do.
But in that motion, I would talk about the scope of what the committee will do.
Right.
Which is
Two things. One, affect the Forest Service planning, and then to continue to get assurances that nothing changes when the label changes, that it's not a WSA anymore, but until the Forest Service and we get a chance to affect that management, everything stays the same.
and making recommendations on this bill as it progresses.
Yeah. Boy, Mike, you think this isn't a tough job? Huh?
Get all that, Mike?
Yeah, poor Mike. Yeah.
And on one of my comments is that after the last meeting, we were supposed to put out applications. Did anybody bring any with you? You wanna be on it?
Can we still get
Sure,
applications?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Cause I think cause I only got a couple.
Well, they're due February 12th.
But I mean, I just wanted to make sure
Blanks, I say this.
that everybody realized that, so was all I'm saying.
Right.
Just after what we got told by the lawyer.
I grabbed one of
Make
those.
sure that everybody knows that just cause you wrote your name down on here, that don't
Grant.
hurt you.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
That's all
so-
I'm trying to say.
I got you.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Has it been seconded?
I second it.
Okay.
Do you want Mike to read that back?
Yeah, I do.
I don't have it down as something.
Okay, so Scott moved that we continue the advisory council to do two things. To continue the discussion on the label of the WSA. As the bill progresses, and then the second thing was to prepare how we're gonna advise the Forest Service on how to manage what used to be a WSA. Is that
The bill, yeah.
Does that work? Okay. So,
No, the members of the advisory committee.
okay, the commission's, we're here. You guys are watching now for a minute. So, there's a motion and a second. Do you agree with the motion and a second, agree with the motion?
Yes.
Is there any discussion on the motion among the commissioners? No? Okay. Quickly, is there any public discussion on the motion?
Could we just maybe include in that motion something to clarify on the website or wherever it's posted that this is intended to advise not just on this bill, but on forest management going forward? Because I think that's where people are getting confused. If it's not just about the bill, can we clarify that it's for forest management?
The confusion was, the following meeting, I was not here, the county commissioner advised that, you probably ought to put that out so people can apply, but misstated the intent of the advisory committee.
So I'm just asking if we can include in the motion or by
I think you did.
process that. But I mean, the ad, the posting, like, can we include that is modified to reflect the commission's intention?
No, it's not modified.
I think on his,
You're talking about on the website?
Yeah.
Or yeah, just putting it on the website.
On the website, in the
absolutely.
ad, in
Sorry,
the.
I wasn't tracking, sorry. Yes, we can, we'll make sure it's clear.
But if it's gonna be an ad, you're gonna have to,
We're gonna modify the ad too. We have to, motion's different. Good point.
so then you'd have to keep it open for longer.
Yeah, I think we can. So in the motion, do you wanna make it, open it up for a little longer? You wanna modify your motion?
well, it's still, well,
Think that's long enough?
But you wouldn't be able to get it in the ad change in the paper.
why would stay before it's still there?
Because it misstates the intent. That's the whole problem, and I think,
Get me a change by 5 PM today and we'll get a change in the ad.
all right, God bless America, then we'll leave the motion.
Oh, and they can do that all the time. Isn't that amazing?
Any pertinent, comments on the motion? Go. Quick. Yeah.
I believe that the commission should be chosen and should immediately interact with the Forest Service. That they should make themselves known, introduced, state their, positions or whatever they're gonna do, and start making those connections.
Excellent.
I'll go after Sue, go ahead.
So,
So if I'm understanding the scope of the committee, will be more like the one with the Beaverhead and the one with Ravalli, where ranchers, miners, all the varied entities are there. So that's quite, Blaine, isn't that quite lengthy to set that up? I mean, you really,
Well, this right now is just gonna be, my understanding, just a simple advisory committee, and then they
Right.
could go and do that later on.
as it
Yeah.
evolves. Yeah, but I just wondered about the numbers, because with the Sapphire Wilderness Advisory Committee, it was gonna be only like 6. So if we're gonna morph into a bigger, it will morph into a bigger committee, go on, Chris, rather, to enable all the people to
that's a good point, Sue. I think we could just all, as ladies and gentlemen, ask the chairman to make sure that if there's pertinent people that want to come on the board, that he ought to consider them on the board. Okay?
And I'm open for that, I think it should be both sides, so we can.
Any county, I guess last time you said just Granite County?
Yeah, we're gonna try to.
Anybody?
We're gonna try to stay in the Granite County, but there are interest, folks from outside that actually live here and have interest here, so that's up to the chairman, we'll leave that up to him. Yeah.
Thanks, Commissioner. So just to be clear here, the advisory committee was formed to inform the commissioner's decision on what to do about this legislation. That was
No, it was not.
Well, what has happened now is a revision of history. And now we are putting an endorsement of the legislation before the committee does
I
anything.
appointed the committee, I know why I did it.
So
They could modify their motion.
Yeah, we
But
modified
is
the
that
motion.
acting in good faith? When you invite people to participate in a committee, to make a decision before the committee has a chance to weigh in, how does that encourage participation in a committee? So I just want to make that really clear.
How is that not in good faith?
Hey, we are, you know what? We're just citizens like you doing the best we can, okay? So, you know what? We ain't perfect, and Nobody said that. We're doing the very best we can. And so, you know, if you don't like it, have a nice day. If you do, participate. That's all I care about. Anybody else? Yes.
I'd like to muddy the water just a little bit. In that the motion is to interact with the Forest Service. There's actually an opportunity for the county commissioners to bring a collaborative together that doesn't have to interact with the Forest Service specifically. It can actually develop a plan after the wilderness study area is repealed. And I think that's probably the better alternative, that the citizens do a plan that works for the users, by the users. I don't think we need the Forest Service to direct the plan down the road. That's like a national protection area or something like that.
I think we're talking about the same thing, but when they open it up, we want to have say on that.
And they can always revise what they do with that.
Okay, just so long as we understand that there's certainly alternatives, it's not just restricted to, okay.
Good point. Elena?
I was at Elena Gagliano, Philipsburg. I was at all 3 of the meetings that were had. If there's any question about it, you can look it up on YouTube because it was videotaped. I think it was clear, especially where Kerry White brought up the Custer-Gallatin Working Group and gave a template on how this advisory group is permanent. And you should do it based on that, call it a working group, Granite County Working Group. And we will discuss the wilderness study areas. We will discuss wilderness areas. We'll discuss something that's interesting that has to be addressed, and it's the Granite County Wildfire Protection Plan that Granite County has that's outdated and totally filled with errors. So that could be an ongoing commission to deal with these problems.
Sure. Good comments. Good. Good. Anybody else? All right. So there's motion on the floor. We've had discussion from both the commission and the public. I'm going to call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The advisory council, we're going to let them name themselves a little bit better, has been established. Okay, so any other comments, quick, for the good of the order? Thank you for coming and educating us.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
I don't know.